Okay, it is 5 minutes past the hour. I think we're going to go ahead and start the webinar. I would like to thank everyone for joining the webinar today. To start with introductions, my name is Malcolm Hale. I work in the Children's Bureau Data Analytics and Reporting team. I, as well as Talisa Bird, are the federal project staff overseeing the creation of the National Child Welfare Data Management System. I'm going to ask Ramnik to introduce himself.
Yes, my name is Ramnik Bakal. I am with ICF providing project management support for the NCWDMS system.
And Regina?
Hello, can you hear me? Hi, my name is Regina McPrince. I am partnering with ICF. I am with Highlight, and I will be demonstrating the NCWDMS system this afternoon. I'm the IT trainer.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So in regards to audience participation in today's webinar, these slides and demonstrations are not long, so we plan on taking questions at the end of the webinar. You can use the Q&A box to ask questions as we go along, or wait till the end and either raise your hand and once granted permission, unmute yourself, or if you have called in, you can hit *9 to request the presenter unmute you. We provide here and at the end of the presentation some resources that can also answer questions after the webinar is over. You can see that there is a phone number and mailbox for the NCWDMS system itself. The focus of this webinar is on this NCWDMS system itself and not on the particulars of the Family First or AFCAR's data collection. So if you have questions related to that, we've also provided the CB data team mailbox at the bottom of this slide for you to send your question into. And these email addresses and phone number are repeated again at the end of the webinar. As previously mentioned, my name is Malcolm Hale. I'm here to give everyone an introduction to the National Child Welfare Data Management System, the NCWDMS, which you probably guessed by now is internally known as NCWDMS. But what is it? It is the Children's Bureau's effort to create a modern platform for the secure transmittal and storage of administrative data sets. The first of these to be collected, and the partial focus of this webinar, is the Title IV Prevention Program data elements. That being said, most of this presentation would also be applicable to the AFCAR's data element, AFCAR's data collection, though that's about a year away. Next slide, please. Thank you. I want to give a high-level overview of some aspects of the system before we do a live demonstration, the first of which is sort of the where. Perhaps unsurprising to some, the Children's Bureau has made the decision to move the data collection application to the cloud. In particular, we are using the AWS platform. We are hoping that this platform will provide high levels of reliability, as well as the opportunity to scale up or down the system based on demand. As one would hope when the system is developed on the cloud, we're trying to make sure we have all our security ducks in a row. So the application is FedRAMP compliant. We have been given an authority to operate, an ATO, from our Chief Information Officer. And we have regularly scheduled scans, so we should be avoiding embarrassing problems like open S3 buckets. I've also included on this slide the URL for where the actual system can be reached. And I believe it is repeated again at the end of this presentation. And that is ncwdms.acf.hhs.gov. Okay, next slide. Another aspect I wanted to cover was how users will be able to access the system. For most people on this call, to access the system, you will need a username and password, which will be provided by the Children's Bureau. You will also need access to an authenticator app. And I want to repeat that, and you're going to need access to an authenticator app. This is based on federal IT system requirements. Unfortunately, while SMS, that's text messages, based two-factor authentication is a large step up from no two-factor authentication, is still not considered secure enough these days. So to that end, we have listed the authenticator apps, which the Administration for Children and Families, Office of Chief Information Officer has already reviewed and approved for use. And as we become aware of other authenticators that agencies might be using, we'll try and get them reviewed and approved as well. So that list of authenticators that is currently approved is Google Authenticator. I believe Twilio has a version, Okta has a version, and Duo has a version. If your team on the call is not sure what any of this means, I ask that you sort of take this information, this slide, back to your IT staff to make sure that you have access to Authenticator app, that this is not going to become a huge burden on you. We just want to make sure that it'll be smooth sailing when it comes time to actually submit data. If you are federal staff participating on this call, then you'll just be using your PIP card to log in as a sort of final note. Next slide. So one term that you'll see pop up on the demonstration of this system and possibly on other slides is STT. STT is just our abbreviation for state, tribe, or territories. We're sort of acknowledging the expanding pool of agencies we're working with. Within NCWDMS, each STT will have an interface to transmit data, review compliance and data quality reports, provide commentary data about a data file, and the ability to submit the data file. This is referred to as the STT workspace, sort of the user interface, which you can do all these different things. With the exception of certain things like submitting a file, everything that happens within the STT workspace is solely viewable by the STT. So we invite you to transmit files whenever you want, examine the resulting data quality and compliance reports. You can provide commentary to the file, describing it as a test file if you like. None of that is anything we can see on the federal side. It's only when you actually submit the file to us officially does the file itself become official for our purposes. And I think I skipped over something I just wanted to touch on very briefly on the last slide, which is that as of right now, all users are required to log in to interact with the system. There is no built-in API calls that can be used to automate the sending of data or anything else like that right now. That is something we are aware that certain states would like. And this is sort of an agile, sort of longer-term development. So it's something we'll take under advisement and see if it makes sense to implement. But I can't promise anything. Okay, I think next slide. So I just want to sort of highlight the submission process at a high level. Transmitting the data file to NCWDMS is the first step in the data file submission process. The data file passes through some simple checks before it ends up in the STT workspace. And those checks are, we run it through antivirus software. We check to make sure it's a valid file, that you're not sending us 50 gigabytes of your favorite poetry. We're going to make sure that it's an XML file that closely matches the schema that Children's Bureau has put out. And just to remind everyone, for Family First, the schema is in Technical Bulletin number 1 revised. If you're more interested in the AFCARs, that is in Technical Bulletin number 21 for AFCARs. And we're also going to verify that the file you have submitted is for the right agency and for the right period. Those are sort of the initial checks we do. Next slide. Once we have the file, we're going to run it through our rules engine and data quality checker, which is a somewhat fancy way to say that we're just going to check it against the pre-established compliance checks if it's an AFCARS file, and sort of our predefined data quality checks if it's an AFCARS or Family First file. And based on that, it's going to produce reports that are accessible within your STT workspace. So you'll upload the file and it'll automatically have sort of the rules and data quality checked on it. Next slide. So once a data file has been transmitted and the data quality and compliance checks run, STTs will also be invited to provide commentary. Right now, this is restricted to a sort of a general comment on the data file level, but we are planning on expanding it to allow for comments to individual data quality or compliance checks. Okay, next slide. So once the state is satisfied with their file and want to make an official submission, they can submit the file from within the STT workspace. This will make the data file and any compliance data quality checks results available to the Federal Program Office staff. Now, I want to emphasize that transmission and submission are different from each other. We are using these terms very deliberately and not interchangeably. So you will see during the demonstration areas specifically called transmissions and submissions. The transmit files are files that have been uploaded to the STT workspace. The submitted files are official files that have been sent on to the Children's Bureau. So I want to make something very explicit so there's not a lot of confusion here. A state, tribe, or territory must submit their data for it to be official. Merely having a file in the STT workspace does not allow for us to see it, so it doesn't really count as having got the file in on time. The STT should therefore plan on transmitting their files, before the last few minutes of the data transmission period to allow time for the data quality reports and compliant reports to run, for them to be reviewed, things fixed if needed, or even just put commentary and explain why it can't be fixed. And all of that takes a little bit of time. So we ask you don't wait to the last minute to do this because it may cause problems. So I think, next slide. I think those were just sort of the overall general concepts I wanted to cover before we hit the demonstration, but I'm going to turn it over to Romnick to talk a little bit about planned dates and milestones.
Sure. Thank you, Malcolm. Just to kind of briefly go over our key milestones at this point. Our go live was at the end of January, as you see there on the 31st. So the application was successfully deployed. We are starting a pilot timeframe, so it's sort of a soft launch for about a month and a half to get some users some experience with the system, get some additional feedback, make any tweaks or adjustments if we have to. That period will go from February 1st to March 15th. After that, we will come upon the initial date of submission time period. We are focusing first on the family first data set. That time frame will be from April 1st to May 15th. Now, as we head towards next year, in 2023, we'll be working to provide support for the AFCARS data set. Of course, AFCARS has additional compliance rules, data quality rules that we'll be incorporating into the system in a subsequent release. It will be ready for the piloting of that, which will be from January 2nd of 2023 through March 1st of 2023. So we'll do a similar pilot at that point next year. And then the initial date of submission for AFCARS will be from April 1st of 2023 to May 15th of 2023. So those are some key dates to keep in mind as we head forward. Next slide, please. Now we're going to kind of set the stage to talk about the functionality in the NCWDMS application at this point. We're going to demonstrate some of the flows that Malcolm just discussed in the previous slides. Specifically, we're going to show you how to view STT users, view transmissions files list, and actually go through the process to upload a transmission file, including the different checks that Malcolm was discussing. You'll be able to see general file checks that occur, as well as any data quality report results that come up based upon the data quality rules for Family First. We'll also show you how to add or update file commentary, as well as submit files over to the Children's Bureau. So I'll turn it over to Regina, who is our IT trainer, to actually do the demonstration. Regina?
Good afternoon, everyone. Once again, I'm Regina, the IT trainer, and I'll be sharing my screen to demonstrate the NCWDMS system. One moment, please. Okay, so I will first be showing you how to log into the system, and then we'll move forward through steps associated with submitting a transmission. All right. So to log in, you want to first have your NCWDMS username and password for STT users. Mine's is already implemented, so I'll log in. Okay, and the next step, you will be prompted to enter your passcode for multifunction authentication. So I won't be able to show this part on the screen for security reasons, but I will talk through what I'm doing. This is the point where you would have chosen your application that you want to authenticate your identity within the system, and you would open that particular account at this time. So that's what I'm doing. All right, and I'll enter the passcode that generates. I am using Google Authenticator, by the way. Oh, it just changed. So sorry. Once you're authenticated, it will take you from the login screen to the transmissions. Actually, it takes you to the home screen. It's probably because I was just in this screen. I apologize. All right. Before I move forward, I apologize. I missed one step that I did want to bring. I wanted to bring to you guys' attention. Please forgive me. So I'm going to back up. I'm going to log out. I'm sorry. On this screen here, I'm so sorry. I wanted to actually point out the user guides that will reiterate the steps that we discussed in this actual meeting today. For state users, it's titled STT Users Guide. Once you click here, it'll open a document that will walk you through these steps and others. So really quickly, I'll log back in. Pardon any noise. All right, so from here, I will be navigating mainly from the navigation bar here at the top. Everything is at your fingertips up here, and you'll see how I utilize this navigation bar to easily go from one task to the next. My first step is to demonstrate to you guys how to view the state users list. And to do that, I would click on the users tab in the navigations bar. It will populate a list of users. You will see more if your screen is larger. Of course, this is my laptop. I'll hit the scroll button here in the bottom right-hand corner so you can see that there are other users here. And I also want to point out that this data here in this demonstration I'm showing is strictly fictional. It's for demonstration purposes only. All right. The next step would be to view the transmissions files list. And to do so, you can go right to the transmissions icon in the navigation bar once again. It should generate a transmissions list, a list of transmissions that are ongoing. And from here, once you're able to view the transmissions list, you want to upload a transmissions file. So we will move forward to upload a new file. To do so, you want to go to the upload file button in the upper right-hand corner. It will populate this window that prompts you to move through these steps to accomplish that task. First, I'm going to choose an XML file to upload. And I want to stop here and I want to make sure I pay special attention to the fact that I communicate you guys cannot upload a non-XML file. It won't be accepted. So you want to make sure that you do have an XML file to move forward. Choose the file. And for me, I actually put them in my downloads. And I will choose the file I want. Click open. And as you can see, the file did populate in this column. So I'll move to the next section. And there are 3 options in this section. One is out of home care. The next is adoption assistance. And last but not least, there's family first. Out of care and adoption assistance is exclusive to AFCARs. So I will be moving forward to family first for this particular demonstration. I have reviewed the XML file in advance. So I know that the applicable reporting period would be 2022, A as in alpha. So I'll choose upload to start the process, and you'll see the progress notification populate. And if we look here in the transmissions file list, one moment, I have to expand. So this is the one that I just did, 696. In this, on this page, I want to also point out the file status here. If the file says, you can move forward to the next step as long as it says process. And to clarify, or this process here, or even to, in case you forget, make sure that you are you're well versed on the different statuses. We have provided a hyperlink here at the top of the transmission screen. And if you click here, the hyperlink will display a file status key. And here you can see a description of all of the different phases that a transmission goes through in order to complete a successful submission. So we are at the process status, so it's okay to move forward. My next step, the next thing I'll show you is the file check report feature. There are two ways to access both the file check report and the quality report. For your convenience, we've made it where you can go to the file ID column. And if this was the file you wanted to review, you would click on the file ID number. I'll do both, so you'll see both. Here, I'll click on the file ID number, and it takes you right to the file check report on the file of detail page. Here, you can also find the file name, program, type, report, and period that we specified, the number of records in this particular file, who was transmitted by, the date, and the applicable agency. All right. These attributes are always here. So next, I'll double back, if you don't mind, and I will show you another user-friendly way to approach this particular report. You can also come over here in this column titled File Checks, and you would click the icon link to review that same report. Some reports may have more details than others. This report displays, of course, the proper format. It will review that, and it also reports on timeliness of the report. All right. So moving forward, you would move to the next step, and that would be checking the data quality report. You can find that both, here in the quality report column. This is the data quality report associated with, hold on, actually, this is not the one, sorry. The quality report associated with the transmission we just performed. You can also find this information once again. Going to the actual file ID. And then I will click on the quality tab to review the report details. All right. In this report, you also have one more hyperlink, and that is so that you can review all the rules associated with the file type in case there are errors. I will do one more transmission to show you guys one that has errors. It should be pretty brief. So once again, from transmissions, I'll upload a file. Choose the file. And this time I will, we'll go into a different area. So okay. Well, one area. I have it in two areas, so I apologize. Okay, so I guess I will show you that I will upload some information that'll show. It's actually already documented. I'm sorry. Did you want to try it?
Yeah, I just want to say, I think you can check file 698. We preloaded it. So if you just go exit out of that.
I'm sorry. All right, one moment.
Yeah, you can just cancel.
Exit, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's try this again. Yeah, there's my fault. Here.
Yep, that's the one.
Okay,
There you
yeah,
go.
I can see. Okay, so one moment. All right, that's what I was looking for. Thank you, Romnick. I appreciate it. So here, once again, and maybe show you guys the errors that are here. And if you wanted to make sure that you understood what each error meant, of course, you would click that hyperlink I was speaking about previously. And it would show you the particular error associated with, well, the meaning of the error you saw. Okay. So I will move forward. The next thing you want to do after submitting a transmission, I'll go back to that file. You want to, if you would like, you can submit a comment by clicking on the commentary tab. To do so, you want to click on the edit button to the far right. And at that time, you can add and both update a comment. So there's one present here. If I wanted to change the status or, add an additional note, I could do so. And once you do that, you would designate the comment. You have two choices here to do. You could actually click on private or official. If I was to click on private, STT users would exclusively be able to view this particular comment with that agency. If I chose official, once you designate the comment as official, both STT users and federal users or CB users can view the comments. Hit save.
Once it's been submitted.
Once it's been submitted, thank you. Once you hit save, that should retain your information. All right. You'll preserve your information, and then next is submission. All right, here we are. So I'm showing the submissions list here. And let me. I'm sorry, I skipped a step. So I failed to submit the file. So I will be hitting the submit file button in the far right-hand corner under the column title Actions. You'll receive a message, a pop-up box that asks you to review and confirm the submission before moving forward. I'll confirm. If you chose not to, you can hit cancel. Okay, it's going to process, and now I will check submissions. The chime, I hope you heard it. That is actually the notification you'll receive in your inbox upon successfully submitted message that'll come in the system, and you will be able to view the details. It'll just tell you that you have successfully submitted the file. All right. And you have a link in that email that also allows you to get back to file details. Here are the two submissions. This one was here before, and now we have this one. And that is the end of my demonstration. Thank you guys for listening, and I will pass to Michael. Hello?
Amber, can you share the slides and advance it to the Q&A? Thank you. All right, well, so thank you very much. That concludes the sort of the presentation part of the webinar. We're now going to open it up for questions. I'm going to answer the one I should have answered a long time ago, and I apologize. Will the slides be available? Yes. I believe the webinar is also being recorded. That will usually take a fair amount of time just due to 508 compliance requirements, in particular because half of this was a PowerPoint and half of this was a sort of demonstration. But we'll get those to people as quickly as possible. Okay, so I know at least one individual was asking whether Azure MFA is okay or not. I can't speak directly to that, but do send us an email. We're still sort of working out with the OCIO what the exact process is for getting the different authenticator apps approved. Obviously, I think the best thing for us to do would be to sort of make sure that if you guys are already using an existing authenticator apps, to use that one. So we're going to work with them to see if we can get it working. There is not a limit on the number of users that can be set up for an individual state, tribe, or territory. Though obviously there's a sort of reasonable limit, but no, it's definitely not limited to one. It's, however many you might need across the different data sets to sort of make sure the file can be uploaded and improved. I will ask that people try and ask their questions in the Q&A box rather than chat. Thank you. So I think we need to drop, so there's a technical bulletin number 1 for Family First, and there's a revised technical bulletin number 1 for Family First. And I want to make sure people are going to get the right link. So I dropped the link in the chat. I know someone was being helpful. I just want to make sure that you want to make sure you're on the one that says revised. I think the other one has a note on it that says it's not for use anymore. The data elements haven't particularly been changed. There's just a lot more clarification, particularly around the XML file in the revised version. So let's see here. So sort of the person who asks, is there an existing file template that we fill out with the data, or does the state create their own files? There is an existing template. It's an XML. We're asking for XML files, which means that there's sort of a schema defined in a separate file that we've made available to people. So if you look at technical bulletin number 1 revised for Family First, that sort of shows you what the structure of the data we're expecting is. And if you have any further questions on that, once you sort of look at it, that's a good time to email the CV data team mailbox. The system is available for sort of piloting now. Obviously, you need a username and password set up so you can start sort of testing your files against it. So there'll be sort of 2 steps for that. One of which is that we, CB, need to sort of work with the states, tribes, and territories to make sure we have the right names, email addresses. And once we have those, we'll set them up in the system for people. And then I believe, and Romnick, you can correct me if I'm wrong, you will receive the individual will receive an email to that email address, leading them through the rest of the step for setting up their account.
Yes, that's good.
Thank you. Romnick, can you sort of talk more about how states can manage their own user accounts?
So essentially in the first release, STTs or states will be able to view user accounts in the system. As far as being able to create accounts and update accounts, that functionality in the initial release will be available to Fed users, CB users, essentially CB regional users, and CB program admins. I think there'll be some coordination through the CB regional users to, at least for the pilot, and they have to get email addresses from STTs who would be interested in participating in the pilot. And then they would set up those accounts. And as Malcolm mentioned, you'd receive emails. If there are updates needed, then that can be handled through coordination, but communication between the CB regional or CB program admins and the STT users. Down the road, we may investigate giving STT users, at least a certain type of STT users, account managers, access to be able to manage users directly in the system, but that needs to go through some security confirmations to see if that's feasible down the road.
Right. We ran into an issue where, for security purposes, we were told we needed to approve individual users to the system. The federal government itself has to approve individual users. So that part will always, it sounds like, have to go sort of through the Children's Bureau. One individual did ask, is it possible to see the time of the file upload in addition to the date? It is something we can explore adding. That obviously that information is being kept, it's just not being displayed. So that's something we can sort of examine, adding back in or not.
There was a specific question to me, I think, from Caradith. I can take that one. The Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians IT department. I think they haven't sent back a follow-up yet, Caradith, to answer your question. I think we did send the form to Doug Chase. So maybe you can follow up with him if he needs any additional details from us, and then we can close the loop on that. I did see your question in the chat.
Okay, an individual asked, do we need to build a system to produce these XML data files and submit quarterly? Is this accurate? And when is the first such report due? Going backwards, the first such report due is sort of clarified in technical bulletin number 2. So I would check that one out. Like someone can post that in the chat too, hopefully soon. That one hasn't been revised. So the link to that should be good. In terms of expectations, yes, you need to build your system needs to be able to produce these XML data files. This is true for Family First, and this is also true for AFCARs. And that is not that different than sort of the previous expectation that your system can output for the older rules of AFCARs, sort of a flat file in a particular format with the data in it. I guess, is it clear or sort of unclear, sort of the process going forward, that the CB will be reaching out and working, I'm assuming, through the regional office to gather the list of usernames that we need. And by usernames, I mean email addresses. And from there, we will generate names for people. We'll generate accounts for people. And once they go get that email and set up their account, they'll be able to start piloting the system, which is sort of online now. I do see a note that this is very similar to the NCAN submission process, and that is true. We are hoping to be able to avoid sort of the crunch time, long processing times that happen towards the end. Whether we're successful or not, I don't know, but the plan is to not necessarily punish states if the system itself is sort of having problems. Okay, thank you. Jennifer has posted a link to technical bulletin number 2, which lays out the current expectations for when the data files will first need to be submitted based on, I think it's the approval of the original state plan, but don't quote me on that last part. It's whatever the technical bulletin says. So individual asks, is it possible to withdraw a submission or to resubmit if the submitter later realizes that the original list submission had errors? So the answer to that is yes. So whenever you submit a file for a data period, it will by default become the active file for that period. So if you submit a 22A file and it looks fine in terms of maybe data compliance or quality, but you realize there's a sort of fundamental error with it, if you resubmit another file for the same period, then it will by default become the active file for that period. So essentially that would overwrite the other one. Now it's still an official submission, so we'll still be able to see it. If it's a sort of in the AFCARs world, there may be sort of, there's separate ramifications for that we don't going to go into on this. So as I said, there's an individual asking, are you starting from an existing list of users for who you anticipate will use the system? And how can states verify that list? And if there needs to be changes, who are those changes provided to? And if states want to participate in the pilot, who do they notify? So I think that's sort of part of the Children's Bureau reaching out via the regional office to make sure that we have the agreed upon list of individuals who need to be in the system to start with. I believe, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, is that sort of after we do the bulk entry of usernames and passwords, there will be a user request form, which you will have to send in, and that'll go through and be approved by federal project staff member, and then they'll be added to the system. And in that respect, it wouldn't be that much different than sort of how I believe NIDED and NCANs are set up right now too. So someone asked, it looks like it's possible to submit a file with identified errors. Is that correct? Do we need to provide comments or unfixed errors? Yeah, so right now it's possible to submit a file with identified errors. Ideally, if you are, I would ask, if not beg you to please put comments on it so we know what's going on, whether it's something you're fixing or if it's sort of a fundamental issue related to how policy is set up in your state that you can't fix. That's sort of useful information for us. For Family First, there's no direct compliance checks, so there's not necessarily going to be a penalty attached to having any errors in the file. But we are trying to make sure we have the best data we have. So that's sort of the goal, is to provide that feedback for you. And if possible, have the error fixed, and we're sort of retransmit a file and then submit one that doesn't have those errors. There can be multiple uploads during a single day. I think that speaks to the individual who was wondering if we could put a timestamp on the transmission screen again. So I'm going to count that as a second vote for adding that back in to the Agile process. Yeah, I'm not seeing new question. Oh, sorry, go on. Can we advance to the next slide, even if there are more questions that have come in? So again, on the slide here is the URL for where the system can be reached, particularly once you have users set up so they can start interacting with the system. As Robnik mentioned, we're going to have a pilot. So that's a good time to start transmitting files, particularly if you're in sort of the earlier set of Family First states. And I should say, again, clarify that the pilot is for Family First for now. But if you're particularly one of the earlier states to submit, to make sure that you can sort of transmit and see what sort of errors may or may not pop up when you do it. If you have any trouble accessing the system, there's an email address and number provided below. And again, if you have any questions around the Family First data collection and AFCARs, but mainly focusing on the Family First for now, please feel free to email us at the CB Data Team mailbox. We don't have it on this slide, but I just want to reiterate that there are technical bulletins that lay out the variables that we need, that are part of the data submission. That is technical bulletin number 1 revised for Family First and technical bulletin 20 for AFCARs. There's a separate technical bulletin that talks about the XML format and sort of requirements around encrypting IDs that for AFCARs, and that's technical bulletin number 21. And for Family First, there is a technical bulletin that lays out when the submissions need to start, and that is technical bulletin number 2 for Family First. And I guess Not to put Regina or anyone else back on the spot, but was there any part of the presentation or the demonstration that we should back up to so people can look at it? I'll give people a minute or two to chime in if they need to see something again.
So it's up to you guys. If it's something that you guys want me to display, the system is up. But Ramnik
While people maybe think about whether they want to see anything again, I will answer a question that came in that says, once the stage files are uploaded, is there any data analysis that we can view? For now, that would be rather much limited to the data quality reports. And if it's an AFCAR as a compliance report, there's a possibility in the future, but sort of this is an agile process. And for now, the focus is really on making sure we have the fundamentals of what we need there first. Someone asked if you have a question regarding the technical bulletins for the Family First data reporting. Is the correct contact cbdatateam@acf.gov? Yes. Yes, it is. Please email us there. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone particularly requesting we go back through the presentation. Are there any, sorry, someone asked, are there any test states identified yet? So we've had several states and a tribe help test this during a sort of our user acceptance testing, as it's called. I probably haven't thanked them enough for the testing they have done. It was very useful feedback. So there are states that have tested the system so far and helped highlight some problems. Many of which we're working on. So at this point, we're moving to a pilot and sort of it is open for everyone, but we are going to prioritize states that will be needing to interact with the system to submit their data for Family First sooner rather than later. And I guess for one of the things that did come out from the user acceptance testing was the need to work with the states to make sure you have an authenticator app. So again, I want to stress the need to make sure that you have either an authenticator app that your state already uses that is already on the approved list, or to let us know what authenticator app your state is using and would like to get sort of approved so we can work through our Chief Information Officer to get it approved. Or if none of this means anything to you, sort of make sure we can reach out and work with you to make sure you understand sort of what the requirement is. Okay, if there's not any more questions, I'm happy to give people however much time has back. Yeah, about 30 minutes. But I can wait another minute or two for any final questions to come in. Okay, I think I'm not seeing any further questions, so I think we'll go ahead and draw the webinar to a close. I'd like to thank everyone for their time. And again, we are here to answer any questions you have. Feel free to email us or call us. Tom, can we go ahead and end the webinar?